Hello, and we're bringing you the last and the fifth episode of the series on authentic assessment. And today we're talking about the very popular and something that all of us know, which is the Bloom's Taxonomy. The Bloom's Taxonomy, we have all met Mr. Benjamin Bloom when we were preparing to become educators. So this episode is going to be talking about the taxonomy. We often tend to focus only on the cognitive domain of Benjamin Bloom, and that's what's very popular in all the institutes of education, pre-primary, primary, tertiary, secondary, everything. But I thought I'll begin by once again taking us all back to the three domains that Benjamin Bloom talked about. So he said that there are there's a psychomotor domain of our cognition and learning, of all our intentions. We also develop our psychomotor skills, which is physical manual skills. Then there is a cognitive domain, which is what the focus of the entire taxonomy seems to be on today, which is about mental skills and knowledge. And then there is also an affective domain, which is about attitude and what kind of a self do you want to develop, which is pointing to character development. So those are the three domains of the taxonomy. The way we look at it is that psychomotor domain is all about the physical skills, the cognitive domain is about intellectual or mental skills, and the affective domain is about values, your belief systems. What's your notion of a human being for your own country, and therefore you build that into your curriculum. However, this episode is going to be focusing on Bloom's cognitive domain, which also means that in his cognitive domain, we are also taking care of the cognitive skills. So we're not doing the psychomotor skills or the affective domain in this presentation of this episode. So there's another thing, that there is the Bloom's taxonomy as we all of us know it. And there's a ladder because there is remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. But we also know that this is a revised one. There was an old taxonomy. For those of us who've got silver in our hair, we've also known the old taxonomy. And then there was a revision to it. So we will be talking about both very briefly. Okay? So a little bit of the history, because that's very important. So this is a revised taxonomy that we are going to be talking about. What does that mean? It is a taxonomy, that means a classification from lower to higher of cognitive objectives. It was developed somewhere in the 1950s by Benjamin Bloom, and it's pretty universal. Everybody uses it all over the world. Of course, there's a lot of criticism about the taxonomy as well, which we will discuss. It's a means of expressing different kinds of thinking, actually. So for the first time, there were levels given to the kinds of thinking that human beings do. It's been adapted as a planning tool. Many of us know that we also take the taxonomy when we are crafting our learning objectives. We look at the verbs of the taxonomy, right? It provides a way of organizing thinking into 6 levels, from the most basic, which is known as remembering, to the most highest or the complex, which is creative thinking. Now here is the critique, that there is no hierarchy really of what comes first and what comes next. But that's the critique that we will sort of bear in mind as we are learning about the taxonomy. Later, 40 years later, in the 90s, Lauren Anderson, who's a student of Bloom, she revisited the taxonomy, and therefore some changes were made, and we are also aware of those changes. So these are the original terms, as many of us might know them. Benjamin Bloom called them knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. As a revision, what Lauren did is she said, how can you measure knowledge, right? So this is a taxonomy and we are using it for authentic assessment. How can you measure knowledge? So she changed from the noun to the verb. Right? So knowledge became remembering, comprehension became understanding, and then applying, analyzing, and then there was a switch, because it was felt that creating or creative thinking is the highest domain of thinking, and therefore synthesis or creation was taken on top, and evaluation or evaluating was brought at the 5th level. That is the change that she made. This is an interesting slide. Because it also shows us some of the subparts of the taxonomy. You can see that I've drawn a line where higher order thinking skill is concerned. Because everybody says, oh, HOTS, HOTS, HOTS. And you ask teachers, what is HOTS? There's some random answers, maybe like analyzing, maybe problem solving, and so on. I don't personally like lower order LOTS, but well, that's the critique of the taxonomy. But let's begin. So remembering also has some sub-skills like recalling information, recognizing, listing, describing, retrieving, and so on. The reason I've put that there is we are going to be leading into how do I use the taxonomy to frame my assessment questions. So these questions start with such words, recall, recognize, and so on. That's the level of remembering. Higher than that is understanding. Explain in your own words, interpret, summarize, paraphrase. Can you explain why? Can you classify this? Those are the sub-skills of the second level of understanding. And you can see that I've got applying at the horizontal line. Because applying, some part of applying, which is direct applying like we do formulas, etc. in mathematics and physics, that is still not considered higher order. It's still in the lower order bracket. Again, I'm emphasizing, I don't personally like to call it lower order. All thinking skills are essential for acquiring and gaining knowledge. Okay? But whenever you apply something learned in a new situation, that is what is applying. But some kinds of applying comes into the higher order, so the mark starts there. And then analyzing is clearly in higher order, breaking information into parts, comparing something with the other, that's analyzing. Higher than that is evaluating. We have to remember that there is always a very, very thin line between each of these levels, right? So for example, analyzing and evaluating might have a very thin line because in evaluating also we compare two things, right? But then in evaluating, we also offer a value judgment. That's why evaluating. We offer a value judgment. Why do I think so? Okay? We'll go further to see how to frame questions using the taxonomy because this is a module for authentic assessment. And the highest, as proposed by Lauren Anderson, is creating. So whenever you do something new, it's not just making a craft and an art project. So we tend to think that creativity has got to do only with drawing, painting, art, poetry, music. Not necessarily. Even when you look at something in a different point of view, when you change your point of view, when you construct, when you plan, when you produce, when you invent, all of that is also creative thought. Okay? So these are the 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy. As we know, this is the revised taxonomy that we now work with. And we have also tried to show you what is popularly known as HOTS, higher order thinking skills. So we will move to questioning now. Okay, so therefore, how do I frame questions at both these levels of the taxonomy? Largely, those which are aimed at remembering and understanding and some kinds of application are known as lower order, and some sort of application, analysis, evaluation, creation is higher order. That's easy, it's an easy peasy thing to know. Okay. So what's expected is once we have crafted our objectives, which are also based on the Bloom's taxonomy, we have the verb wheel, as we know, and if you'd like, I can put that into my description of this module if you send me some questions, if there is some doubt about what is this verb wheel that I'm talking about. I haven't taken it here because this is a part of assessment and not setting objectives. But what we are saying is that the minute the objectives are set in your lesson plan, we must plan formative assessment. How? The questions should be mapped to these cognitive levels, and that's why they are known as cognitive level questions mapped to the Bloom's taxonomy. Again, it's remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. That is what we are going to be looking at when we are framing our questions at all levels of the taxonomy. You might want to ask, what percentage do I give to each level of the questions? There is not much wisdom there, except that we need the students to also know a lot of information as they are growing in their primary years. So you might want to have a lot of questions for remembering and understanding also there. And then as they grow older, you also start having questions for the higher order thinking skills. That doesn't mean we cannot have questions for higher order thinking skills when they are even in the pre-primary. It's possible to do that even with fairy tales. So here are some question stems that I'm going to leave you with to think about because I'm showing those to you in a couple of slides. For example, so you will get these question starters. They're also known as question stems. I'll be happy to post them in the description if you would like. Okay. So for example, questions of remembering can begin with, can you name, find the meaning of, who spoke to whom, reference to context kind of stuff that we've done. Is this true or false? Match the following, fill in the blanks. Simple recall questions are for remembering. You move a little bit higher and then you say, do you even understand what you are doing? So write in your own words. How would you explain? How will you summarize? What was the main idea of this passage that you read for comprehension? So questions based on the comprehension, if children look for that, it becomes for remembering, simple recall. But when you ask them what's the main idea, you take them a notch higher. Similarly, for applying, can you apply this in another instance? You read about 3 little bears, and the third bear had the home built of the strongest material, right? Suppose I ask you to build an umbrella. Would you choose paper? Would you choose plastic? Would you choose tarpaulin? Okay? Application of something in another new situation. Do you know of another instance? Or what would you change? Or can you develop a set of instructions? And so on. Those are for applying. Some still lower, some go higher. Then we move to the HOTS, also analyzing. So analyzing is usually compare and contrast, right? So how is this similar to that? How can you distinguish between this and that? What was the turning point in the story? Students are expected to use the skill, cognitive skill of analyzing. These are all cognitive skills, not psychomotor, but cognitive skills. Okay, Bloom's taxonomy of the cognitive domain is about cognitive skills that we're developing. Higher than analyzing is evaluating. Now here the value judgment comes in. Judge the value of this versus that. Okay? How is this better than that? Why is Pune city preferred to Bangalore? Okay? And justify. And that is what is about evaluation. Defending your position. Defending your beliefs. Why do you vote for this party and not that? Can you justify your choice? Who will gain? Who will lose? And the highest level of the taxonomy is questions when you frame them for creating. Remember, not just for art and craft, but designing, finding solutions to a problem, novel solutions to a problem. That is why we have the adult tinkering labs, where students are trying to develop solutions to the problems that they may face in life through technology and even otherwise. Something new, something unusual, writing a proposal which is new, etc. These are everything which comes into creating. Not just doing posters and not just doing sculpture and not just doing art, but creative thinking. Okay? That's the highest level of the taxonomy. So what we have done is understood the taxonomy, also some question stems, framing questions, and that's the way we prepare, whether it is our multiple choice questions, whether it is our formative assessment, whether it is our summative assessment, everything that we have talked about in this series on authentic assessment, we depend on the Bloom's taxonomy in spite of the criticism it has received for helping us frame authentic questions. If you like what we present, do subscribe to our channel, do like it. That motivates us to keep bringing you top class content. This is Devika Nadig signing off for Shikshangan Education Initiatives. We are in Pune.